Petticoat Junction was more than just a hilarious comedy about rural American life. It was once a temporary home for souls yearning for love and recognition. But when the spotlight faded, many of the actors fell into tragedy, died too early, sank into addiction, or were forgotten by the very audiences who loved them. Let's explore the heartbreaking stories behind the scenes. You will be surprised. Let's explore. Edgar Buchanan as Uncle Joe Carson. Edgar Buchanan, whose full name was William Edgar Buchanan II, was born on March 20th, 1903 in Humansville, Missouri, and became one of the most familiar faces on American television in the 1960s. At age 60, he began playing Uncle Joe Carson, the lazy but humorous uncle in Petticoat Junction, 1963, and was the only actor to appear in all 222 episodes. This role helped him leave a deep impression not only on Shady Rest Hotel but also on fans through crossover series such as Green Acres and The Beverly Hillbillies. Edgar Buchanan died on April 4th, 1979 at the age of 76 from a stroke and complications from pneumonia. In his later years, he lived quietly in Palm Desert, California, gradually withdrawing from the spotlight due to serious health problems. When he died, he left behind an estimated $1.5 million fortune, the result of a long and stable career in the entertainment industry. He was buried at Forest Lawn, Hollywood Hills Cemetery, a place reserved for stars who have carved their names into film history. But Edgar's life was not all about laughing in front of the camera. Behind the scenes, he was a man who silently suffered the pain of not having children. A void that even his 50-plus years of marriage to Mildred Spence could not fill. A talented dentist, he was discouraged by his father from pursuing art, which always made him feel like he was going against expectations. After becoming famous for his comedic roles, he often expressed a desire to take on more dramatic roles, but Hollywood stereotyped him as a bearded doctor or a grumpy uncle. Later in life, arthritis and heart disease gradually robbed him of his mobility, and he was confined to a wheelchair. A stark contrast to the cheerful, lazy, yet independent Uncle Joe. That was the greatest irony of his life. A man who brought laughter to the world quietly endured pain that no one knew about. Bea Benaderet as Kate Bradley. Bea Benaderet was born on April 4th, 1906, in New York, but grew up in San Francisco. In 1963, at the age of 57, Bea played Kate Bradley, the owner of the Shady Rest Hotel in the hit series Petticoat Junction. This role became an iconic one for her, portraying her as a strong, witty, and kind woman. Sadly, Bea Benadet's career ended too soon. She died on October 13, 1968, at the age of 62, from complications of lung cancer and pneumonia. Although radiation therapy at Stanford was initially successful, the disease returned with a vengeance, leaving her too exhausted to continue filming the 6th season of Petticoat Junction. Her husband, sound engineer Eugene Twombly, was devastated by the loss and died just 4 days later of a heart attack. The two were buried side by side at Valhalla Memorial Park in North Hollywood. B's net worth at the time of her death was estimated at $1 million, the result of more than 3 decades of work in radio, television, and animation. The most painful thing in B's life was not only her terminal illness, but also her repeated rejection from Hollywood. Despite being one of Warner Brothers' top voice actors in the 1940s and 1950s, and appearing in popular comedies such as The George Burns and Gracie Allen Show and The Beverly Hillbillies, she was never actually cast in a major role until Petticoat Junction. In particular, the role of Granny in The Beverly Hillbillies, which was originally written for her, was cut at the last minute, leaving B with a deep emotional wound. "People remember my voice, but no one remembers my face," she once said in an interview. Yet, with extraordinary determination, B continued to work until her final days. Her life is a tragic testament to a great talent long forgotten by the industry, until it was too late to save it. Pat Woodell as Bobby Joe Bradley. Pat Woodell, whose full name is Patricia Joy Woodell, was born on July 12, 1944 in Winthrop, Massachusetts. At the age of 19, she began to impress audiences with her role as Bobby Joe Bradley, Kate's eldest daughter, on the television series Petticoat Junction. Of the 3 Bradley sisters, Pat's Bobby Joe is a gentle, intelligent girl who loves reading and dreams of becoming a writer. Her appearance in 74 episodes from 1963 to 1965 became a symbol of beauty and purity in America at the time. Although beloved by fans, Pat left the show after 2 seasons to pursue a singing career. But her musical journey did not achieve the success she had hoped for. In the following years, she moved on to B-movies such as The Big Doll House, 1971, and The Woman Hunt, 1972. But her career gradually faded. In 1973, she retired from the entertainment industry and lived a quiet life. On September 29, 2015, Pat Woodell passed away in California after a long battle with cancer at the age of 71. Her net worth at the time of her death was estimated at $500,000, and she was cremated according to her wishes. The greatest tragedy of Pat's life was the silence from the limelight after she left the role that had made her a household name. After leaving Petticoat Junction, she struggled to establish herself in the cutthroat film industry. But most of the roles she landed were glamorous characters in films that focused on the exploitation of women's bodies. She has admitted to feeling trapped between public expectations and unfulfilled artistic aspirations. Cancer was a fatal blow. But perhaps what hurt Pat most was the fading of her fame. Even though she was once the American girl to millions of viewers. Meredith McRae as Billy Joe Bradley. Meredith McRae was born on May 30th, 1944 in Houston, Texas, into a star-studded family. Her parents were legendary entertainers Gordon and Sheila McRae. At 22, she joined the hit series Petticoat Junction as Billy Joe Bradley, the eldest sister portrayed as intelligent, independent, and ambitious in her pursuit of a musical career. Unlike previous versions of Billie Joe, Meredith brought the image of a modern, ambitious woman, making the role a quiet, feminist icon on American television in the late 1960s. However, Meredith's life was not a fairy tale. She died on July 14, 2000, just weeks after her 56th birthday, from complications of terminal brain cancer. The disease was discovered too late after a series of misdiagnoses by doctors. Despite several life-threatening surgeries and experimental treatments, she did not survive. Her remains were cremated and her ashes scattered in the Pacific Ocean as per her wishes. At the time of her death, Meredith left behind an estimated net worth of $2 million, amassed from a nearly 4-decade television career and family legacy. What makes Meredith's story particularly heartbreaking is the sense that she never truly escaped the shadows of others. From her famous parents to the Billie Joe character who framed her in the public eye for her entire life. After Petticoat Junction, despite recurring roles on shows like Magnum P.I. and Chips and a successful stint as host of Mid-Morning Los Angeles, Meredith yearned to be recognized as an independent artist, not just Gordon McRae's daughter. Her marriage to actor Greg Malavy ended after nearly 20 years and 1 child, leaving her deeply traumatized. It was only toward the end of her life, when she remarried businessman Philip Neal, that she found peace. But time was no longer on her side. Meredith's final years were a battle both physical and mental, mirroring Billie Joe's indomitable spirit. Even when she went unnoticed, she fought her fate to the end. Mike Miner as Steve Elliott. Mike Miner, whose real name is Michael Fedderson, was born on December 7, 1940 in San Francisco, California. He rose to fame in the early 1960s and reached the height of his career playing Steve Elliott, the charming romantic pilot on the hit television series Petticoat Junction. Mike was 26 when he joined the cast in 1966, and his character did more than just marry Betty Jo Bradley on screen. In real life, he also married the actress who played Betty Jo, Linda K. Henning, which shocked fans and blurred the line between fiction and reality. However, Mike Miner's life did not have a happy ending like in the movie. He passed away on January 28, 2016 at the age of 75 after a long battle with cancer. Although he passed away quietly, Mike left a lasting impression on audiences with his emotional, theatrical performances, notably in Petticoat Junction and the Broadway musical, The Music Man. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at $1 million, largely from a career spanning more than 3 decades of acting and singing. His ashes were scattered at sea, a simple, peaceful gesture that befitted his gentle personality. But behind his success was a seemingly amicable divorce that ultimately left him devastated. When he married Linda K. Henning, his co-star in Petticoat Junction in 1968, Mike believed he was living a real-life American fairy tale. But behind the spotlight was a marriage that was crumbling, strained by the pressures of fame, simmering jealousy, and the looming shadow of his father, television mogul Don Feddersen, Mike lived a paradox. The son of one of America's most powerful television producers, he never really had control over his life. After his divorce in 1973, Mike gradually disappeared from Hollywood, refusing to give interviews, never remarrying, and friends even said he showed signs of depression and alcoholism for a time. Despite appearances on shows like The Beverly Hillbillies and All My Children, Mike never regained the inner light that had been lost after that fateful divorce. For him, Hollywood had been a dream and a cage that imprisoned his soul until the end of his life. Charles Lane as Homer Bedloe. Charles Lane was born on January 26, 1905 in San Francisco, California. At the age of 58, he played the role of Homer Bedloe in the play Petticoat Junction. The character of Bedloe, a cold and calculating supervisor of the CNFW Railroad, was one of the series' most iconic villains. Constantly plotting to shut down the railroad through Hooterville and close down the Shady Rest Hotel with his round glasses, sharp voice, and expression that looked like he had just bitten into a lemon. Lane made Homer Bedloe both a hateful and indispensable character. Charles Lane died on July 9, 2007 at the age of 102. He died at his home in Santa Monica, California, of natural causes with no serious medical conditions. At the time of his death, he left behind an estimated net worth of $2 million, much of it from royalties and careful investments made over a 70-year career in the industry. Few people know that behind his stern exterior and stereotypical roles like the troublemaker, Charles Lane endured great pain in his life. He lost his only son in a car accident in 1970. Tragedy struck while he was filming The Flying Nun, forcing him to be absent from the set for 3 months. When he returned, people noticed that Lane had become colder, smiled less, but acted more deeply than ever. In addition to Petticoat Junction, he also made his mark as a sharp-tongued lawyer in It's a Wonderful Life, 1946, and a surly bank clerk in I Love Lucy. No one played a stern official like Charles Lane, because behind every sharp look was a lifetime of quiet suffering. Janine Riley as Billy Joe was born on October 1, 1940 in Fresno, California. At the age of 23, she beat out over 300 candidates to win the role of Billy Joe Bradley, the blonde, glamorous, and ambitious eldest daughter in Petticoat Junction. The eldest of the 3 Bradley sisters, Billy Joe represents a youthful, dreamy America of the 1960s, a time when television was innocent and full of promise. Janine's character is more than just a pretty face. She is also a symbol of a generation of women who yearn to leave the small station of Hooterville in search of city lights, fame, and freedom. As of 2025, Janine Riley is 85 years old. She lives a quiet life, away from the media and largely out of the entertainment world. After 2 seasons of Petticoat Junction, she left the series to pursue opportunities in the film industry. Her current net worth is estimated at $800,000. Eventually, Janine Riley slowly disappeared from Hollywood, not because of scandal, not because of noise, but because of the silence that left a nostalgic feeling. The spotlight that once lit up her radiant face was now just a faint memory. In the 1970s, while her former co-stars returned to television or found success in guest roles, Riley faced obscurity. No drugs, no arguments, but no one calls her name anymore. In 2020, at the age of 80, she published a book titled "Bold Woman, It's Time," as a final whisper to women who have cherished dreams that age cannot extinguish desire. But perhaps that is also what she needs to tell herself. Because the Hollywood dream that Billie Joe once pursued and Janine Riley once embodied has long since vanished. Like a wisp of smoke from the old Hooterville train station. Laurie Saunders as Bobby Joe Bradley. Laurie Saunders was born on October 4th, 1941 in Kansas City, Missouri. At the age of 23, she was cast as Bobby Joe Bradley in the television series Petticoat Junction, replacing Pat Waddell after the second season. Laurie's version of Bobby Joe was no longer the innocent, bookish girl, but a charming, witty, and humorous talking Rose who captivated audiences in every scene. From 1965 to 1970, Laurie Saunders appeared in 147 episodes, becoming a familiar face in millions of American families. With her flowing black hair and radiant smile, she was not only the beauty icon of Hooterville, but also the ideal female role model for an entire generation. As of 2025, Laurie Saunders is 83 years old. She gave up acting in the early 1980s and turned to photography and art. She lives a relatively private life, avoiding public events and cutting off all ties with Hollywood. Her current net worth is estimated at $1 million, modest compared to the spotlight she once enjoyed. But behind Bobby Joe's smile lies a long trail of crushed aspirations. The silent wounds of what Laurie Saunders once described as loneliness in the spotlight. After Petticoat Junction, she struggled to escape the enormous shadow of her iconic role. Later appearances, if any, were fleeting, as lovers, gentle mothers, or forgettable secretaries. Hollywood, with its usual ruthlessness, leaves no room for a familiar face that has been seared into the audience's memory. In the 1970s, Laurie Saunders was diagnosed with mild depression but refused treatment for fear of being labeled insane, as she shared in a rare 1992 interview. She shunned the public eye, gradually fading from the screen, and turned down every offer to return as Bobby Joe. Many in the industry speculated that she felt betrayed, that her work was only being acknowledged by one name, Sweet Farm Girl. It was a bitter rejection, but also the mark of an artist who had lived long enough to know that glamour can sometimes be a cage. Linda K. Henning as Betty Jo Bradley. Linda K. Henning was born on September 16, 1944 in California. At just 19 years old, Linda landed the role of Betty Jo Bradley, the smart, emotional, and warm-hearted youngest daughter of the Shady Rest Hotel family. With her signature red hair and innocent charm, she was not only the show's central character, she was also the show's soul throughout its 7 seasons. In the plot, Betty Jo had a romantic relationship with Steve Elliott, played by Mike Minor, and they were married not only in the script but also in real life. As of 2025, Linda Henning is 81 years old. She has long since retired from the screen and lives a quiet, private life, after many years away from the entertainment industry on stage and television. In addition to Petticoat Junction, she appeared on major shows such as The Ed Sullivan Show, Happy Days, The Beverly Hillbillies, and The Facts of Life. Although she did not continue her acting career after the 1980s, Linda is remembered as an icon of American television in the 1960s. Her current net worth is estimated at $1.5 million, largely due to her fame and television contracts during the height of her career. Linda Henning's life is tied to a love story that seems to have come straight out of the movie she starred in. In 1968, while the on-screen romance between Betty Jo and Steve captivated millions of viewers, Linda married Mike Minor, her co-star and on-screen husband. But the seemingly fairy tale story quickly ended. The marriage only lasted until 1973 and ended in silence. Without scandal or controversy, only the distance between them grew wider. After the divorce, Linda retreated behind the scenes, away from the temptations of Hollywood. The roles in works such as Bye Bye Birdie, 1963, and her time performing with the Ladybugs, which had made her famous, are now just golden memories of a bygone era. Linda Henning, the former Golden Girl of American television, has left the spotlight with no regrets. Ruth Davis as Floyd Smoot. Ruth Davis, real name Rufus Davidson, was born on December 2, 1908 in Vinson, Oklahoma. In 1963, at the age of 55, he joined the television series Petticoat Junction as Floyd Smoot, the bumbling but lovable conductor of the Hooterville Cannonball Train. Together with Charlie Pratt, played by Smiley Burnett, they became a classic comedy duo, known for their silly arguments and notoriously odd train whistles. Ruth Davis died on December 13, 1974, just 11 days after his 66th birthday, of a heart attack at his home in Torrance, California. With no wife, no children, no family to care for him, he died quietly. His body was buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park, the resting place of many celebrities, but his grave is often neglected, with no flowers or visitors. His net worth is estimated at less than $200,000, mostly from modest residual payments. Yet, in his death, a story continued to be told. After Smiley Burnett's sudden death in 1967, Davis seemed to lose the will to live. They were not just co-stars, but soulmates, in a figurative sense. The two lived together for many years and were rumored to be two old bachelors who had never married. Davis never spoke publicly about his private life, but in his later years he was often seen carrying a small picture of Burnett in his wallet. After the death of his only close friend, Davis largely withdrew from the entertainment industry, refusing to participate in any memorial shows. Once an entertainer who brought laughter to the nation, he quietly sank into depression, performing at country fairs, imitating animal cries for a few rounds of applause. A sad comedy that no one paid attention to had come to an end. Smiley Burnett as Charlie Pratt. Smiley Burnett was born on March 18, 1911 in Summum, Illinois. At age 52, he played Charlie Pratt, the witty and good-natured train engineer of the Hooterville Railroad on Petticoat Junction from 1963 to 1967. With his straw hat, gentle smile, and familiar accordion, Smiley was not only the glue that held the characters together, but also the humorous soul that brought laughter to millions of viewers every week. Sadly, Smiley's life ended too soon. He died on February 16, 1967, in Encino, California, just a few months after leaving Petticoat Junction at the age of 55. The cause was acute leukemia, a rapidly progressing disease that weakened him in just a few weeks. His sudden passing was a huge shock to fans and colleagues, as Smiley was known for bringing joy wherever he went. He was buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in the Hollywood Hills, a prestigious cemetery dedicated to American film legends. When he died, Smiley left behind an estimated net worth of $250,000. Much of it from a decades-long career in more than 150 westerns, along with his final television roles. The most shocking aspect of Smiley's life was the sheer injustice. Despite frequently co-starring with cowboy superstars like Gene Autry and Roy Rogers, and writing more than 400 songs, many of which were adapted into films, he remained largely obscure. Hollywood often treated him as a sideshow comedian, despite his versatility, ability to compose, write, and play more than 100 instruments. In his later years, Smiley struggled with health and financial problems as studios often passed over the rights to his music. A friend once said, "Smiley was the soul of the West, but they never paid him what he deserved." And perhaps that lack of recognition was the deep, silent wound that the man who always smiled carried with him until the end of his life. Frank Cady as Sam Drucker. Frank Cady was born on September 8, 1915 in Susanville, California. He officially took on the role of Sam Drucker when he was 48. In Petticoat Junction, he played Sam Drucker, a grocery store owner and the oldest man in Hooterville, always keeping up with the latest news, delivering mail, selling goods, and offering up the unnecessary opinions that everyone listened to. What made the character unique was that he appeared not only in Petticoat Junction but also in Green Acres and Beverly Hillbillies, creating a distinct rural universe on American television in the 1960s. Frank Cady died on June 8, 2012, at the age of 96, just 3 months shy of his 97th birthday. He died peacefully in his sleep at his home in Wilsonville, Oregon, after years of living in seclusion. The cause of death was not officially released, but it was believed to be due to old age. He retired in 1990 and lived a simple life with his wife Shirley, whom he married in 1940. Sadly, Shirley died in 2008 after nearly 7 decades together. Her death caused Frank to withdraw completely, refusing all invitations to meetings or interviews. At the time of his death, He left behind an estimated net worth of $1 million, largely from long-term television rights and modest real estate investments in Oregon. Perhaps the most haunting event in Frank's life had nothing to do with his acting career, but rather the tragic death of his wife of 68 years, Shirley, in 1990 from bone cancer. Katie has not been seen in public since. Close friends recalled that he was offered guest roles on Seinfeld and Frasier, but he turned them all down, saying he didn't want to work anymore while his wife waited backstage. Throughout his career, in addition to Sam Drucker, he is remembered for his small but memorable role as a doctor in Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window, 1954. A role that captured the cool and intelligent side of him that he also displayed in real life. Virginia Sale as Selma Plout. Virginia Sale was born on May 20, 1899 in Urbana, Illinois. At the age of 66, she played Selma Plout on the popular television series Petticoat Junction in the mid-1960s. Selma was a hard-nosed, nosy widow who represented the type of judgmental small-towner who was constantly at odds with the Bradley family. Though a minor character, Selma Plout left a lasting impression with her cunning and Virginia Sale-esque sternness, giving her an alluring and unnerving presence. Virginia Sale died on August 23, 1992, at the age of 93. The cause of death was confirmed to be age-related and respiratory complications. She died peacefully in Woodland Hills, California, where she had lived for many years at the Motion Picture and Television Country House, a residence for aging artists. There was no elaborate funeral, no media coverage. Her death was largely forgotten by Hollywood. Her net worth at the time of her death was not publicly known, although there were reports that she lived her final years largely off her acting pension and the charitable support of her colleagues. But few people know that behind the grumpy old woman on screen was a heartbroken woman who had lost her only son, a soldier who had died in the Pacific during World War II. Virginia never remarried after her husband's early death, and the loss of her son left her a shadow for many years. That pain was imprinted on every role she played, from the stern teacher in The Thin Man, 1934, to brief appearances in her early comedies. The characters she portrayed were no longer performances. They were expressions of grief. Virginia wrote in her diary, "Every time the camera panned, I felt as if I could hear my son calling from the trenches. An actress, a mother, a survivor of both world wars, but never free from her trauma." Virginia Sale, a name that was never flashy, but whose life was tied to tragedy that lasted until the end of her life.